After I had Lucas, I was just so overwhelmed, very, very emotional, suffer from really low mood, which the health professionals in the hospital recognised and the midwives recognised in my sessions when I took Lucas in, for his checkups and things, and obviously they check on you and I wasn't in a good space really at the time. I recognised I really needed some kind of support, definitely.
I called my health visitor because I hadn't had any happy feelings or thoughts in about 3 weeks. And she went through the 2 checklists for postnatal depression and anxiety. And lo and behold, I was as high as you could mark. I knew I was low, but I didn't think I was as bad. And obviously, fast forward a week and I was told by a doctor I would have been taken to a mother and baby unit if I'd left it any longer. So it was surprising, but not at the same time.
I didn't feel right. I didn't feel myself. I was very unmotivated, very low in mood, had no enthusiasm or positivity about being a mum. I was just very low, and I just felt, is this it? I grieved my old life, and I wasn't happy. I didn't enjoy being a mum. So I knew that it wasn't right and I needed to seek help.
I actually didn't know I needed it in the first place. So the charity that helped me, I got given that by my midwife. My midwife was the one who pointed me in the direction of them. And I thought, oh, well, what's the harm in getting somebody else to chat with? Because I didn't get diagnosed with postnatal depression until Addie was about 7 or 8 months.
I predicted that I would need help because I'd had anxiety for most of my life, really on and off. The idea of being pregnant kind of was really scary to me. So I struggled a little bit with my first child and had more sort of formal help, NHS type help. So when I got pregnant the second time around, I was kind of looking not for sort of therapy as such, but I just knew that I needed some support and some help. So I kind of went looking, really. It was preemptive for me. I knew it was going to come, so I went looking for the support.
I didn't know that I needed support, quite frankly. I think I was existing in a bit of denial. It's only that my partner really told me about some of the services that were available. Strangely, I had sort of conversations with the health visitor and various midwives, but they never pointed me in the direction of dad's groups groups for sort of peer support, the support of a partner and especially, a man. So to be honest, it was quite hard to sort of find that information, but that I didn't really know that I needed the support until I had a frank conversation with my partner, or my partner had a frank conversation with me.
I found the charity through the children's centre. I recognised I wasn't in a great space, so the lady there, the health visitor, mentioned it to me and just said, look, I think you need a bit of help, and here's this charity.
I found out about the group and the charity that I was involved with through a baby group that I was attending at a children's centre. We met every week, and one of the child support workers at the end of the group, she just said, is anyone suffering or is anyone needing additional support? We have this service available. I'd never heard of it. So I think the children's centres are promoting it.
I found out about my charity through my partner. I did approach sort of health visitors and I approached the midwife. However, it was kind of met with just do some Googling or, check out the NHS standard page, which at that point had nothing populated on it for fathers. It was only that my partner looked on social media and got some messages out on Facebook, looked on Twitter, checked out Instagram. She came across, several charities that were operating in the Midlands that offered that specific support to your father buddies. The frustrating thing is I was kind of asking the NHS and professionals for this information, but was kind of just told, there's support for the mother, or there's these post-maternal sort of mental health, but there was nothing really targeted, or it was at least hidden. I know I'm a researcher from profession and I couldn't find this information, which was just awful. And in that state, I was working, 40-hour week. I was parenting in the evenings. I didn't have the mindset to go digging. It was really hard to locate the information.
I had a really lovely, really supportive health visitor, and she mentioned it really early on. I think Henry must have been about 3 or 4 weeks. And she said, this is what the charity does, and just so you're aware if you do need it in the future. And also I had friends who had done it as well, and had like really positive feedback from them. They gave like a really positive like perspective on it, because in the past, like some of the help groups, it probably wasn't sold the way it should be. I'm really thankful to my health visitor and my friend.
I didn't feel pressured to put on a voice on the phone, and if I was struggling, you weren't then hearing it in my voice, you weren't seeing it on my face. I was texting, and it felt so much more relaxed to it. Well, that's why it was a buddy, because it was someone I could talk to without the judgment of what are they going to think. I had a call, and we'd been texting for a while to arrange a meetup, and that meetup was the first time I felt human in months. Obviously this is during COVID, so we couldn't really go inside anywhere, and we sat outside in nature by the sea with a coffee and just chatted. And it was the first time I'd heard from someone other than a kind of doctor forcing it down my throat, saying, I know what you've been through and I know what you're going through, and you will come out the other side. It was the first time I'd seen the speck of light at the end of the tunnel. So it was also incredible actually seeing another human face to face during COVID that wasn't my husband or my child. So yeah, it was fantastic.
My first contact with the charity was very welcoming. They came to my house. It was a confidential space for me to open up and say the most inner thoughts that I thought were absolutely, I had this thought that my child was going to be taken away from me. It was a confidential space that I could open up. So it was a very emotional first meeting, and a feeling of relief to talk to someone that understands what I was going through. So it was a relief for me.
My first contact with my charity, I went into it with a sort of degree of apprehension and a kind of stubbornness. I come from a sort of working class background that's very masculine. It's very much about you don't disclose your feelings, you just head down and get on with it. So I've always kind of been resistant to that idea of therapy then, and I'm kind of scared of it as well, that idea of almost submitting to someone, making yourself vulnerable. And it was a pleasant surprise that it was a sort of casual encounter, that it operated on a degree of empathy and understanding as opposed to a checklist of questions, even though a checklist of questions is part of that process as a form of sort of measuring, how someone felt 2 weeks ago and how someone feels today. It was more about that sort of empathetic bond. It was about sitting back, feet up, having a conversation with someone via text, via a phone call, which are natural means of communication. So if anything, it helps sort of shatter that sort of apprehension, that sort of fear of therapy then. And I know it's not therapy, it's a buddy system, and that's an important sort of boundary as well. But it gave me someone to, it shattered a lot of those sort of obstacles that I had going into it by, being a relaxed and empathetic environment and exchange with another human being.
I was a little bit skeptical. I'd already been to see a GP who just recommended to go on some tablets, which I wasn't really keen on. I'd done some CBT, and I know that's really great for some people, but it was not great for me. That's drawing happy flowers with happy thoughts in petals, and that's not really my bag. So I was a little bit skeptical, but I thought, but part of their way I was feeling, I was thinking I've got to get help because something bad will happen if I don't. So 2 ladies came from the charity. One would be my buddy, and one was her colleague. And instantly them coming to my own home where I could be more relaxed was amazing for me, because actually getting dressed and getting out was one of the fears that I had. So them coming to me with no bother at all made the world a difference. Asking me questions that they didn't frame it the way that other people had, very much like the tick box exercise. How are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? It wasn't like that. It was a really fluid and natural conversation. And I instantly felt so at ease. Meeting the lady that would be my buddy as well, I instantly felt that connection with her. There was no judgment. I didn't feel like I had to lie. And that sounds silly, but when I felt the way that I did, I felt that I had to lie and put my little mask on and say, well, I do feel bad, but not that bad. It's all right. I'm sure there's people worse, you know. So when being able to speak so freely and honestly, it's quite a weird situation that I've not been in very many times, to have that connection with two people straight away. And yeah, that I instantly felt like a sense of relief that this actually might be something that might help me, and I don't have to keep pretending now.
Oh, it was just amazing. It was just such a lovely, safe, real place. It was just so nice to be part of a group of real mums, and you can all just be very, very open and honest together, and just have that time like that, just those 2 hours, just for like you. Do you know what I mean? Meant the world. But I was having counselling on the same day, and that it wasn't really helping me. I wasn't really doing, like, the counselling wasn't really helping me at the time. So having Little Blue Bell after the counselling, it was just a lifesaver, really. Just very reassuring, like, coming to the group, to know, oh my goodness, you know, like, these thoughts and emotions and feelings I am experiencing are completely natural and normal. Whereas, like, leaving the counselling, I would just feel like I just didn't really feel very well understood by the counsellor, but in the group, I did.
I got in contact, obviously, with my buddy through the charity, and was told, right, we're going to do, might have been a 12-week, maybe 16-week course. And I was not in a good space. So I kind of thought, oh God, a group, am I going to cope? Is this going to be okay? And that first group, I think it's safe to say every parent in that group was feeling exactly how I was. Nobody knew each other. Everyone was nervous. But the two women that led that group put us at ease, laid out what was going to happen, what we were going to do week by week, and everything flowed amazingly. And my charity saved my life. It was a life-changing experience, and I think if I hadn't have taken the leap to do the group sessions, I would be in a very, very different space now, because 18 months later, I still use the tips and techniques. I still manage my anxiety with the way that I was taught, and the techniques that I learnt are ingrained in everyday life now. And I cannot express enough gratitude or love for the charity, because they just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
My charity was amazing, to be honest. I don't think I realised how much I actually needed it until I had it. My buddy came round to my house. It was a confidential space, really chilled and really relaxed approach, which I was really grateful for, because my recovery from postpartum was really up and down. I was quite ill and in and out of hospital a couple of times. So without my buddy on the other end of the phone, or just being able to have a chat or a text message, I think I would still be struggling now, especially like later on down the line when I got diagnosed with PMD. That actually, if I hadn't spoken to my buddy that day, and they had encouraged me to go to my doctor and say what I was feeling, I probably wouldn't, I would have just carried on thinking that was me just being really tired on my own. So yeah, my experience was second to none, really, and I would totally recommend it to everybody else.
For me, I'd had so much input for mental health over the years that I kind of had a toolkit and an idea of how to sort of manage my own mood and things. But what I really needed was just a buddy, just somebody to talk to, because kind of when you've suffered for a long time, you don't want to just keep going back to your mates or your husband and sort of talking about it. So it was an experience that the NHS couldn't offer, because they didn't need formalised help or formalised support. I just needed somebody on the end of a phone that I could message and say, today's not a good day, or to have a conversation with somebody who would actually give you that human contact, really. So that was really positive and really helpful to me that I couldn't access anywhere else. Yeah, it was good that the charity was there to provide that.
So, I mean, my experience with my charity has been transformative. I went into it with a sort of resistance towards, in particular, the resources around mental health and support, that they either infantilize sort of information with sort of feeling clouds or positive petals and all that. Or for men, it's very laddish, it's very gendered, it's very aggressive, it's very much about being one of the lads down the pub and how to talk about those feelings. So I think the human connection that I've experienced with my buddy is it's a connection that never defaults to cliche, it never defaults to clip art. It's very honest, it's very frank, it's transparent. It's very much changed the way, and it's allowed me to access that information. It's given me realistic tools that I can interpret as an adult and as a person, as opposed to just a man. It just sort of isolates the experience. There's a universality to this experience as a parent, and to draw those lines on gender, and then to almost belittle the sort of, or devalue the emotions through just appealing to a laddish language or that sort of common tongue. It really created a barrier for many years between me accessing support, and it's something I just haven't found with the charity. They've been fantastic and just really democratizing that information and talking to me like an adult. If anything, it's changed the way that I talk with my other male peers. The fact that I'm very transparent to my emotions since having these conversations with not only my friends, but especially my friends who have just become recent fathers. It's very much ignited a dialogue there, and it's not perfect. It still does default to some of those cliches and some of those gendered behaviors. It's beginning to sort of chip away at that. If anything, as I said, it's just been transformative.
As a family, we benefited massively from it. And I think, especially with your first child, obviously you had no experience of having a child before, so you don't really know what to expect. And I didn't necessarily realise that anything was wrong, because it was such a sort of crazy whirlwind. Looking back now, you just think, yeah, it just goes so quickly. And you're both tired, you're both stressed, you're both everything all at once. There's a charity there, or a group of charities there to support people in a more sort of informal and much more friendly and much more approachable, I think, from what I've seen. Absolutely incredible what they've done.
It was just so much more personal. It was just like meeting up with a group of friends, really. Obviously going through the pandemic at the time, everything was just over the phone, so it was very impersonal.
With the charity, I wasn't a number. I wasn't passed around to professionals, and in those group sessions you were a little family and everyone knew what was going on, and it wasn't a struggle to open up, and you'd all be asked, how was your week, what's going on, how's little one? You could be honest without having to lie, without having to put the mask on and say everything's fine, because everything wasn't fine.
Yeah, so I've experienced in my journey both types of support. So the prescribed type, I saw at my doctor's surgery a gentleman that was doing counselling for anxiety and depression and PTSD. The problem I found with that is being in the doctor's surgery itself, there's somebody waiting after me, that I've got 10 minutes to say what I need to do, and then there's somebody else due in. It's hard to say when you have an appointment with them every 2 weeks, that day that I see him for that 30 minutes, I might be having a really good day. But the next day, I might really, really struggle. And that's actually the time that I need to talk to somebody. His sessions were very structured, this is what we're going to do at the start, the middle and the end, and this is what you're going to go and do at home. And personally, that just didn't work for me. I couldn't do it when I was at home and I was having a bad day. I would think, this isn't going to work for me anyway, and, sabotage myself. And with the charity, being able to just contact somebody when I'm having a bad day, when I'm having a bad time, and them to be there, to come to me in my safe space on days where I didn't want to go out, that in that confidential space as well, not feeling like a number. I felt like my body was my friend, but with the parameters that with my other friends, I couldn't talk to them about things like this, because I didn't want anyone to think that I was any less than anyone else, or I was struggling, because I was so proud. So my buddy, my friend, was different. I didn't want anyone else to think I was failing. So the comparison between that professional help, which works really well for some people to have that structure, I just couldn't connect or relate to. I really needed someone that would be there on the bad times and support me as an emotional outlet than sort of a really clinical number in and out kind of system.
I've done counselling with groups that the NHS put you with, and I hated it. I hated being on the phone to somebody that didn't meet me, didn't know my kid. It was very, very structured, whereas with the group it was much more laid back. I felt comfortable and not judged. There was other people there that knew what I was going through, and it's not just somebody who's trained who thinks they know how to solve everything. We did so many fun stuff like yoga and making bad day boxes where we put whatever we want in, and it was just lovely. The structured counselling didn't work for me. What the group did was so much better for me personally.
So I started realising that I was getting better, first of all, by attending the groups and realising that I wasn't on my own with my thoughts. Everything I was thinking and doing was normal, and other people were thinking the same or doing the same. I benefited from the group by learning about self-care as well. So self-love and self-care, that went out the window when I had my baby, and just taking that hour a week or an hour a day to have some time out for myself, and being taught that was a way of coping benefited me massively. And just having that time out every week, I began to become myself again. I wasn't just a mum. So Rachel was still there. The charity almost gave me permission. It's okay to have that hour out and have that time to yourself and be yourself again. So that benefited me massively.
I realised I was starting to feel better because people would always ask how you feel, and I suddenly realised that when I was saying actually I feel okay, that I did feel okay, and that I wasn't actually trying not to cry when they asked me, because you get into that habit when people say how do you feel, you're just saying oh yeah I feel okay, because you're kind of faking it. And it was that sudden realisation that actually I did feel okay. I wasn't having to fake that answer anymore, and I just felt lighter. I don't know how a better way of describing it really. My brain just felt lighter.
I just felt like I had more energy in myself, and I was starting to feel more like me again. So I felt like my sense of humour was coming back. I felt like I was able to enjoy the little things in life, like having cuddles with your baby, having like a cup of tea, and just really enjoying those moments. Whereas before, everything just felt like it required so much energy. Like even just sitting and being alone with my thoughts felt like it was a lot of hard work. So I definitely think I knew that I was recovering when I could do these things again and just appreciate life again.
I felt much more confident, and I could start doing things on my own. My body was doing a lot of things with me. And then when I realised that I didn't need her to do things with me anymore, that was when I realised. And as well as that, feedback from my husband and my mum and people that are really close around me could just see a difference in my behaviour, and they could just see that I was getting back to the way that I was before.
If you're at the point where you recognise you need help, it will change your life for the better. It will give you everything you need and more.
If I was going to recommend the charity, I would say you're not alone. You're not alone in your feelings. They will support you emotionally, and it's life-changing, and you're not alone. You can meet like true friends from such a bad or difficult situation, and you can take something positive from it and turn it round.
If I was going to recommend a friend to the charity, I would be saying to them, don't judge it by anything you've had in the past, particularly if you've had clinical help in the past, because this is just so different in its approach, more positive in its approach. It's taking that leap of faith and just giving it a go.
If I was to recommend the charity to a friend, I would just be saying, look at me. I wouldn't be the kind of mum I am. I wouldn't have the little boy I have. I might not have my husband anymore. And if I can do it and put my trust in somebody, then other people can as well. It is a leap of faith, but it's a completely different type of service that you'll receive anywhere else. And it's so personalised and it really will change your life. So absolutely go for it.
I just say, do it, like the bullet, do it. No matter what you feel, when you walk out of it at the end of that first day, you're going to feel like, thank God you did it. I remember when I was like, I thought I was going to be judged, and you're not. Just take the leap and do it. You will be thankful for it, doing the leap.
I've spoken very highly of the charity to family and friends. Yeah, I just say there is support out there. Like I had no idea at the time, and thank God, I found out about it. There is support out there, and it was just amazing. And yeah, just to seek the help and support if you recognise that you need it, not to feel ashamed or frightened or anything, because there's people there to help.